house. This is going to be a good show. Some new construction on the brain today, Greg Slater.
You bet.
You guys are fresh from a trip.
Yes, we like to go fishing together. Christopher and I have been friends a long time, and we had a bucket list trip that got pushed a year by the pandemic. Tropic Star Lodge in Panama.
Okay.
And we got back, 3 a.m. Sunday morning?
3 a.m. this past Sunday?
Yeah, so the crazy thing, our flight is a direct flight from Dulles. Our flight from Dulles to Panama left at 2:22 in the morning, and it returned on the way back at midnight to Dulles. So, yeah, we were red-eyed.
There you go, guys. We'll start the show in about 30 seconds. Give it a like and a share anywhere you're watching. Hello, Southern. Welcome to the broadcast. Fellas, we'll get to your questions from yesterday. If you got any questions for Greg or for Christopher, please put them in the feed. You know we're going to have fun here for the next hour on the I Love Seaville Network. Christopher Bremen, is this your fourth time?
Maybe third, maybe fourth, something like that.
Is it second in person?
Second in person,
Second
for
in
sure.
person. The first one was before COVID.
With Jody Mills.
That's right.
On behalf of BRHBA.
Oh, that's right. We were talking about that. That's right. Keith is watching at St. Martin. Keith, what are you doing?
Stop working, Keith.
Enjoy
Take a
the
break.
sunshine with that beautiful wife of yours.
He's a little nervous, but does he ever get to sit in this chair?
No.
Does he know where I'm sitting at?
Keith, Greg is right in the middle right here. Keith actually likes that chair that Christopher's in, and he's a creature of habit. He is a creature of habit. Give the show a like and a share. Stony Point, hello, 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 and welcome to the broadcast. J-Dubs, my friend, we can rock and roll. When you are ready, we are in your hands, sir. Guys, good Tuesday morning. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk. This is an insider's guide to real estate life and the pursuit of happiness. We're presented by Interstate Pest and Service Companies, a home's best friend. Interstate Pest and Service Companies, nearly 50 years of proudly serving, more than 50 years of proudly serving this community. Also thanks to Yes Realty Partners and Yes Team Realtors, our executive producer and friend of the program, Keith Smith. Right now doing some sunbathing on a beach in St. Martin. As a result, we got two gentlemen who are rising to the occasion. Judah Wickhauer is our director. Why don't we welcome these gentlemen. Judah, by going to the studio camera, please, you will see our friends, Greg Slater and Christopher Bremen on set. Good morning, fellas.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing good.
Fresh from a trip?
Fresh from a fishing trip, a bucket list fishing trip. Christopher and I have been friends. We have a couple of buddies. We go on fishing trips maybe once a year, every other year, and sometimes we go to exotic places, and we had always wanted to go to Tropic Star Lodge. Matter of fact, one of the guys that went with us had been thinking about it since he was a child, right? Had seen it in National Geographic magazine. It's a legendary fishing location, and so we got back on Sunday night from 3 days of fishing at the Tropic Star Lodge. I think Judah's going to throw up a couple of pictures, but it's about exotic fish. We caught rooster fish, Cabrera snapper, Christopher pompano, the blue trevally. There's a lot of sail-bill fish out there. We have a little experience with that, so we kind of didn't get into that. But it's inshore fishing and highly recommended for anybody who's looking for the big-time fishing experience.
Who caught the biggest fish?
Christopher caught a 60. So
I think we have a picture of it. It's so big it almost looks fake.
This rooster fish is kind of the holy grail out there for certain fishermen in the world because there's so few places to get them. And the average rooster fish people catch are 20 or 30 pounds. Within about 3 hours of fishing, I caught a 50-pound rooster fish and our heads exploded. And about an hour later, Christopher caught a 60-pound rooster fish. And if that picture's up there, yes, your head might explode. It is exceptional.
Judy,
beautiful.
On screen? Oh, they're on screen. We got Slater right there. He's going to get Christopher on screen. Christopher, tell us what was going through your mind when you're reeling in this fish, dude.
I mean, it was a sea monster. I fought that thing, it was 5 or 6 minutes. He didn't fight as hard as maybe some fish, but he was pointing straight to the bottom, and he wanted to beat me. I want to say, first and foremost, no fish were harmed in
That's
the
right.
rooster fish
Catch
reeling.
and release and the very lot of conservation.
Oh, is that what you guys do?
That's right, absolutely.
Our mate was talking to the fish we were throwing back gently before he put them back in the water. I mean, these guys really take care of the fisheries. It's quite remarkable.
I mean, I'll jump in. for those fishing and fish art fanatics, Guy Harvey happened to be on the trip while we were there, and for those that know, he's an artist. He paints fish for a living. If you own shirts about fishing, you probably have a Guy Harvey shirt. But he has a foundation that's dedicated to tracking these amazing fish and where they go, all in the interest of creating a sustainable fishery.
Cool. Very cool. Guys, if you have questions for Christopher or Greg, if you want to give them props on the humongous fish they just caught while on a fantastic vacation, you can put that in the feed as well. I mean, why don't we get into it? Where do you want to start?
I thought it might be helpful to kind of talk about where the market is, kind of pre-pandemic to post. Well, are we post-pandemic yet?
Are we post-pandemic?
Maybe not quite.
You don't think so?
The numbers don't.
Turn in the corner for sure.
Yeah, I think people, we're getting around without masks a little bit, and that feels really good. I thought we'd talk about that because the market conditions are driving people who maybe never considered new construction to new construction. And if it's not the what we consider to be a little more production, land included purchase, like Southern Development Homes and Stanley Martin Homes and builders like that, we've got the buy the land and build the home separately model with builders like Christopher, which custom design build model. But briefly on the market, I think there's some stats here that are pretty telling to what's going on. By the time we finished 2020, we actually kept up in sales. And when I'm talking about sales here are all contracts in Albemarle County. And when I talk about listings, I'm talking about resale-only listings in Albemarle County, right? This is the bulk of our market and a good barometer for what's going on. But at the end of 2020, compared to 2019, we were 4% ahead on contracts. So contracts did well in the pandemic. We slowed them down for a while, but they picked back up. Listings never really came back. So when we ended 2020, we were 185 listings off of 2019. So we dug a hole in the inventory. Now, what I do is I watch every month for that listing activity and compare it to the month before. In January, we were still short of last January on listings. In February, we were still short in last February on listings. Even comparing March over March when the pandemic hit, we still listed less homes this March than last March. But when we got to April, we saw the first real uptick, and we listed 96 more homes than we did last April. And that's completely to be expected because we were in the throes of the shutdown at that point in time. So what I did is I went back another year to 2019 to feel like what that listing pace in April really was. And what I saw was it was within 1% of the listing pace in 2019. So for the first time in April, we listed a normal amount of homes historically in this market since the pandemic started. The challenge to all that is we look at January through April compared to last year, we're up 40% on contracts and we're even on listings. So we came into the year a couple hundred listings behind. We haven't caught very many of those up, and we are selling a lot more homes. And I will say this about the market. For a while, we were tracking still tracking what we call immediate sales. What percentage of the inventory is hitting the market and selling immediately? And at the hottest part of the market, while this amount traditionally or historically is about a third of the listings sell quickly. We got to 74% at the hottest point in the market. And each month I follow this, and look, we're still in a very strong seller's market, but it's starting to come back a little bit. And as of the end of April, that dropped to about 64%. It's still a tremendous number of the homes that hit the market sell immediately and often with multiple offers and often more than full price. And you just kind of have to know the market to know where those hot spots are, and that's going to happen.
What do you think, Christopher?
Yeah, I was seeing the same thing. It's funny, the behind the scenes, I don't know when you want to dive into some of that stuff, but I think about the buyers that might be causing the sustainability and the price point that's selling, maybe a shuffle of people from more urban areas. Maybe the home that they sold in New York or DC was worth a lot of money and they come down here with that. And I think it's creating an affordability challenge down here. It's something I'm sure we'll talk about more on the show here today. But and likewise, that lack of listings, I think, turns into a lot of conversations. My phone is ringing very regularly, dipping their toes in, figuring out, is a custom home maybe the right idea for me?
I think the Zillow CEO said it best probably about a year ago. He says, we're going through what's called the Great Reshuffling, or that's what he named it. Because what happened is people sat back and realized they didn't love what they had and they wanted something different. And if they were going to have to live through pandemics, they were going to do the heavy lifting of figuring out where they wanted to be to raise their family or live their lives. And in the first phase of the rebound, I think the most affluent people are the most nimble. And that's why we saw the high-end move, and we'll talk about a little bit what happened with land sales. But now as we get further through this, I've had 2 meetings in the last week where I met with someone yesterday who has decided to sell their home because they want to live in Charleston. And it was just something that happened during the pandemic, They have no other motivating factor. They do their jobs virtually. And so we went through that period where I know you talked about on this show, you're not selling your home because you don't know where you're going to go. Well, we're starting to get through that, and people are like, you know what? It's going to be difficult, but now's a good time to sell our home, and we're going to sell our home and then figure it out. And that's part of what's bringing this inventory back to normal levels. People are less afraid to go sell their home.
Your buddy Kyle Baca in Arlington says, solid roosters, boys. Giving you guys some props on the fishing.
Kyle's been on a fishing trip with us before.
Really? Is he in Northern Virginia?
Yeah, he's a post-college, back into the family business buddy of mine. Hey, Kyle.
He says hello. If you got props for the fellas, put it in the feed. Bob Penio, the esteemed architect, watching the program. He says, we're looking good, fellas. Christopher's got questions, and you got questions already. Should I fire one?
Just take a swing.
Okay, this one's for you to start here. Christopher, where's the land going to come from for new construction in Charlottesville, Albemarle, the urban ring? Good question.
That's probably as good a question for, who's that from?
This is from Brian Susia, who's watching in Crozet.
Brian, thanks for the question. That's a great question, and it's one that Greg and I talk about regularly. I wear the kind of the custom home builder hat, and so we're looking more for acreage parcels outside of the city limits. Usually, they're getting picked over, and I think it's a challenge. I think you've got a lot of developers looking at bringing planned developments to the market, and I'll hand the mic to Greg in a minute to talk about that. But we're likewise looking for those opportunities. I owe Jeff Maddie a call. But there's a lot of realtors out there that are going and looking at those land opportunities for the more custom builders like myself. I'm not a land guy myself. I don't have the crystal ball on that one, but it's something we think about. We react to our clients, whether they already own a piece of land or maybe they're working with a realtor finding a piece of land. But that's where we find land for our clients. Greg, do you want to talk about neighborhoods?
I do, but before I do that, I want to give you quantify what you're talking about, what we actually call the big land grab, right? So in 2019, before the pandemic, if you look at Albemarle County land sales, over 200,000, right? In Western Albemarle and Ivy and some of these locations, the premium acreage opportunities are basically 200 and up. We sold 55 in 2019. In 2020, we sold 117.
Wow.
And this year,
2x plus.
Yeah, and in 2021, we're already at 60. So through right now today, we've already sold more parcels of land over 200 grand than we did in all of 2019.
So that's an all-time record, right? In a calendar year?
These are all-time records. I can't tell you how many all-time pricing records I've seen in the last several months. One happened over the weekend in Grey Rock. Most anyone's ever paid to live in Grey Rock.
Prozac?
Yeah. So it's happening. We're actually going through some type of correction in another direction. It'll be nice to see where this all settles in when we have more balanced conditions. We definitely don't have balanced conditions right now. But in regard to future neighborhoods, that's an ongoing conversation. Difficult to put timelines on these things. There are projects out there. The newest community, as an example, in the area is a place where Southern Development Homes is building, North Point. They have lots in phase one that they haven't started any homes yet, and they've sold all but one of their lots available to them to sell in phase one without really even being predict a firm delivery time. And these homes are mostly in the 575 to 650 range.
Mm-hmm.
Craig Builders is in there too, having just as much success. So that tells you something when communities sell that many homes before they're even able to start the homes.
Joe, JB Shaver, giving you some props right now. Christopher Bremen. So what do you attribute that to? The folks that maybe want to climb the vertical housing ladder, the inventory that's currently on the market maybe doesn't match their criteria, or it's at a price point that's higher than they thought. So they said, heck, why don't we build a home? Yeah,
so the inventory's so low, and you realize you've sold something and you're making some type of transition between the house you're leaving and the house you're going to. Does it really matter to extend it another 6 months or to a year at that point? So, once you've made that transition, it's an adventure, and more people are just choosing these longer timelines. The other side of that coin is people know they have homes that can sell easily. If you're a little more a little less risk averse and resourceful, you may choose to go buy something else before you sell that other home. Or I've had people make that decision, wait till the home's 60 days from being done, and then pop their home on the market, still sell it and close on it and have those resources to use at their new construction.
That's a hell of a cash position, though, for those folks. How about the folks that don't have that cash position?
Well, you have to look for, you probably have to sell your home first and make that secondary move. The other,
you're talking renting in the short term.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's why, right now those two new apartment complexes in Crozet are taking short-term rentals, and they're filling that void. They launched during a pandemic. They're only a third full. There's plenty of apartments there. But some people get lucky enough to play the game where when they sell their house and they have multiple offers, you get the highest price, but then the second thing you want is occupancy terms. So if you can get someone to buy your house and let you rent it for a few weeks or a month or even longer while you go shopping or complete that next transaction, that's the easiest way to make one move.
Realtor Ray Cadell's got questions for us.
Sure.
Ray Cadell, do Christopher and Greg have any thoughts on the flat rate commission structure some builders are using now? Here's a real life example for Buy World this month. Sales price $594,000 times 3% would equal a traditional commission of $17,820. The commission offered and accepted by me to represent my clients was $4,000. That's a $13,820 haircut.
Yeah, so I'm very familiar with this, representing as many builders I have in my career in this conversation. Charlottesville's a relatively unique place. There are a lot of markets where big builders who build 100, 200, 300 homes a year don't even offer commissions or use realtors in their business model, right?
They just listen to the
They
MLS.
don't need them. Yeah. And historically, Charlottesville has been a little more realtor-centric market with realtors. I've worked hard in my career to still add value to a builder's business model, like Christopher or Southern Development Homes. But essentially, these are market condition things, and these commission rates are subject to those market forces. So if builders don't need realtors as much, they're going to offer less money. If they're making the level of sales they need, they're going to offer less money to realtors for their help. And it becomes, for Ray, when a buyer hires me to be their agent, we set a rate for what I'm getting paid. If they buy something that is not offering that same level of conversation, it's really not about what the seller's offering or the builder's offering. It's about how I'm going to be paid what I'm owed between me and my client. And so that real conversation, I think, is answered on the agent and their client side of the ledger versus what the seller is offering. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Yes, and so it's difficult. And one of the reasons I'm glad Christopher is here is we're going to talk about, we've been working hard to educate buyers and even realtors on how you do business when you have to start with buying land and move to hiring a contractor versus showing up where they say choose among these lots and choose your floor plan and we'll sell you it all as one package. It's a very different business transaction, and more buyers and realtors have been forced to consider it because of the inventory challenge that we have. And letting Christopher explain how he does business, I think, will be helpful to people who've never considered what it really takes to go down that custom design build path.
Let's do it. Jump in. And you got more questions on this topic here.
Well, let me start maybe I'll interview Christopher a little bit and see if we can't get there. We meet people either before they bought land, while they're buying land, or after they're buying land. But when you buy land, it has to be evaluated to determine what we call with feasibility studies to figure out, can you put the home you want on it? Where does the home go? Do you have to drill a well? Do you need what type of septic system? And I thought I'd let Christopher jump in there with a little bit about how he handles those inquiries and what services you offer to help people in that phase of the process.
Yeah. And Melissa Miles says hello. She's watching the program.
She didn't say hi to me? Just Christopher?
Missy,
come on.
Melissa Miles is giving props here.
Melissa, thanks for watching. That's a great segue. We understand what it's like to buy a resale, an existing home. We understand what it's like to buy a new home from builders that build in communities. You've got an inventory of plans that you can choose from. You've got some level of customization that you can make. Maybe it's a tile package, paint colors, of course, cabinetry and countertops. A true custom build is a different endeavor, and you need to go into it eyes wide open. We want to make that process as easy as possible for our clients. We've been working on revising and honing Bramante's proven process for decades. My father started this company in 1978, but it starts with conversations, one-on-one, asking the right questions, probing, listening to the answers. Pinterest boards. Maybe you are into house.com pages, but it's a conversation about creating a home that's different than what you can find out there. Those are our ideal clients. Maybe they've been looking, maybe they want acreage, maybe they want a certain lot type, maybe they want a certain view type, maybe they want water exposure. And then of course there's the house shape itself, whether it's an architectural style or the way they live in that home, where the master bedroom is, where the other bedrooms are. Maybe we'll call that an owner's suite instead of a master bedroom. But those are the kind of conversations that lead to considering a custom build. And there's a lot that goes into that. So our team does a great job of, we'll have a couple calls. We'll talk about your land options, your lot options. The county GIS, even the city's GIS system are very helpful. We can preview 2 to 10 lots for a client in an afternoon before we narrow the list, and then maybe we get out on site. We understand what's the tree situation, what's the water and sewer situation, is it public or is it private, and we provide a high level of guidance so that folks can narrow down their lot decision. From there, we start talking about the house. We talk about price often. We talk about price 3 times to simplify it. We'll shoot off the hip on day one. Very quickly, we'll go to a little bit more detailed initial budget. We may not have a plan by then, but we get more accurate. And then that's when we dive into design of the house. And by then, we have this budget that creates a roadmap. Because despite this big process, we're not just picking a plan out of a book, and we got to go find land. Despite this big process, we want to put the steps in order so the client feels taken care of. We manage expectations. We make sure we understand their budget, their wants and their needs. We prioritize as much as we can into that budget. Inevitably, there's a laundry list of options. Sometimes a few fit in. Sometimes they all fit in. We get there. But we go from a budget, we design the house, we write the specifications, we get to the fixed price. It's time consuming. We ask people to set aside at least 5 to 7 months for that phase. But by the time we're done with that, I like to say we've already built the house, right? Virtually. And then it's just about bringing that vision to life. And that's really when a lot more of the fun stuff happens. We start picking out granite or marble or quartz and cabinets and tile.
Yeah, let's back up to the beginning of that process a little bit. The primary questions I get are, hey, I've got $700,000 spent, $800, whatever the number is. Can we get this much house on this piece of land, right? And there's a lot of unpacking to do to figure that out. And Christopher's team, a guy like Christopher can walk out on that lot and do estimates for how long the driveway is going to be. He can look at the topo online and figure out what the conditions are for where the home wants to be. We can estimate well and septic costs and things like that. So, one of the most difficult things I think the people I talk to struggle with is, how much can they really spend on the land to get the home they want? And you can start by buying the land and then building with what you have left, or you can start with your whole budget, get an idea for what the home costs, and then back into what you can spend on land. But even after you've identified the land, there's a lot of work to do before you close on it. When you buy a home, you're going to have a financing contingency and a home inspection contingency. When you buy a piece of land, you're going to have what's known as a study period. And that could take, on this market, as much land as we've heard is being consumed, there's a depletion of resources and well drillers and soils work guys and things like that. So it's taking mostly 60 days or longer to do a real study period. But that's to determine what type of septic it is. And a lot of people are spending, you may spend $5 to $10 grand in your study period and ultimately not buy the land. A lot of people don't understand that because the only way to make sure you really have water is to drill the well, and unless you can get the seller to pay for it, you're probably paying for that yourself.
You got, is it Alex Koskowski?
Koskowski. Hey, yeah. Alex, what's going on?
Giving you some props right now. The Craig Builders page is watching the show. And the Craig Builders page is asking this question. Gentlemen, how about highlighting the cost of goods going up and how that's impacting things in this market?
That's you.
Great question. I got to say, and I took some notes last night as I was preparing for this, I think that lumber is the 800-pound gorilla in terms of increases right now. We've seen it, we've seen it in pipe, we've seen it in metal, copper concrete. We're talking about allocation on cement right now. Not to dwell on any of these things. Largely, a lot of this stuff is palatable in the market right now. But lumber's the 800-pound gorilla. We've been fighting it since, quite frankly, mills started shutting down a year ago. They were freaking out. And then demand came back. People started working on deck projects at home, right? And then larger remodeling projects. And now this new construction boom is creating availability issues. So we're fighting both prices as well as availability. We track. For you guys over at Craig Builders, I'm sure you're looking at all the same stuff. We track the lumber commodities index. That's one way of looking a little bit further out. That's kind of probably a month or two ahead of what our local lumber yards owned inventory is going to look like. They're in a market where prices are going up. Everybody wants to, they want to buy as much as they can as early as possible, so they're deferring that bigger price point of purchasing goods in the future. So we look at that commodities index, and that commodities index has looked a little scary over the last 6 months. But I'm pleased to say that in the last
it's going down.
In the
Price
last
is going
2 weeks,
down.
So from the scary number from February, that number spiked up another 40%, but in the last 2 weeks we've come down another almost 15%. So maybe there's a little silver lining there. There are a couple new OSB plants, oriented strand board. This is the stuff that goes into your wall sheathing, your roof sheathing. It goes into the joists if your builder's using I-joists instead of open web trusses or 2x10s. I'll try to get away from the granular level, but we got a couple new OSB mills projected to come back online this year. We're some softening on tariffs from Canadian lumber is hoped to help our situation a little bit. We're actually, in the last 2 years, we're keeping 50% more of our goods on coast in the United States instead of shipping it out. So we're exporting less. So these are all the strategies that our industry is using to overcome those challenges. It hurts, it pinches. Different builders are handling that in different ways. I'm a member of a club of other builders around the country. I visited with them in Louisville, Kentucky a couple weeks ago, and we started a conversation there, and that thread continues in my email inbox on a daily basis. And we're all talking about how we're handling things. We're getting ideas from each other. Some people have chosen to simply absorb some of those increases. An escalation clause is another way that builders may handle kind of sharing some of that risk of price increases with their clients. An allowance is kind of the other end of the spectrum. One thing I've learned as I'm talking to a lot of different builders, I was on the phone with a guy from Van Meter Homes up in Northern Virginia yesterday. We just can't find enough opportunities to have these conversations and learn from each other. But I think a lot of the bigger builders can lock in longer price locks on materials than some of the smaller guys like myself, and we have to be a little more nimble. So to boil it down, the best way that Bramante Homes deals with the lumber environment right now is by having candid conversations as often as possible with our clients.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it. So to put in perspective for the super layman like me, and correct me if I'm wrong, a 2x4 pre-COVID was what, $3? During COVID, it was like $11.
Yeah, I mean, they're 4 times as much right now.
Yeah, and then I read, I think it was last week, we're still, what, a 37% increase with lumber, COVID till now. So it's still a huge uptick, but it's stabilizing. Did the price get so high that it stifled demand, and then it caused the price to lower? Is that what happened?
I don't know if we can. I don't think we can look at that in the rearview mirror just yet.
Okay.
I think we're facing it right now. We're playing chicken with lumber right now, and that's what buyers are doing. And people they're either staying on the road and fighting it out, or we're going to find out if people decide to shelve their project. I'm not seeing it right now.
What do you think, Greg? And Melissa says hello, by the way. She
Thank
just put it
you,
in the feed.
Melissa.
She said hello.
I think we get these questions every day. People want to have a little more macroeconomic.
There's a lot of them now.
Understanding of the market, and I will tell you, what he said is exactly right. We're living it right now, and we're trying to use our experience. In my case, 25 years of experience, and in the Great Recession to try. But things are just so much different. I often tell my clients if I could go back even 4 months, I would give completely different advice than I gave 4 months ago.
Oh,
that's
how so?
That's how fast things are changing. Well, in January or February, we hadn't seen the crazy start yet. We knew we were in a seller's market and things were better, but I know I sold homes in the fourth quarter last year that I could sell for much more money right now. But we didn't know that the upward pressure was going to be so strong and so fast. And so the number one question I get, which I can't answer, to be honest with you, I can tell you what I think and what I'm monitoring, and that's why I do all these stats every month, right? We've got to find the bleeding edge where the ease on demand in relationship to the depth of the problem with the inventory is starting to get closer together. And we're seeing a little bit of signs of that, but we're only 1 month in to cooling off the flames. So how long is it going to take to put them out? We don't know. But here's the question. If I pay these prices now in this bidding war, how bad is this going to turn out for me if I sell it in 5 years, right? Or 10 years? This is what people want to know. People still remember the depreciation cycle we went through, the correction down in values we went through during the Great Recession. But you have to remember that was caused by a financial crisis and an unemployment crisis, and it was dramatic. And it was a correction down. We flatlined and we slowly started coming back out of it. And to me, it comes down to appreciation rates. During the Great Recession, we got to properties depreciating in value. If you listen to economists now about what's going on, we're going through a hyper appreciation rate. If the average appreciation rate in the history of our real estate market is between 1% and 3%, we're living between 5% and 10% now in some cases.
Or higher.
Yes, or higher.
Here, especially.
On an annual basis, 5 to 10%. But we've seen 10% or more in a year in some cases, and there's those hot A+ locations that will happen too. So to me, we have to get the inventory, the supply and demand somewhat more in balance. And what we do is look to see if we're going to just slow that appreciation rate. In other words, are we going through a correction up that's going to be the new table, where we go back to 1% to 3% from there, or are we going to have to settle back down a little bit? But at some point, we're going to get back to that historical 1% to 3% when things are in balance. And the question is, what happens between now and then?
Christopher's got questions coming in for him. First, Bryce Craig giving you some props right now.
Hey, Bryce.
On the show. Ashley Spinks on Twitter says, Jerry, can Christopher speak to the pension subcontractors? Is he experiencing that now like all of us are?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say it's across the board, but everybody's busy. This is where relationships matter. We take great care of our subs. We pay them as fast as they can turn an invoice in. We treat them like family, and that's what's paying people back right now. So as you're choosing a builder, a contractor, choose a builder that has those relationships. And don't get me wrong, even those relationships can't be overcome by some of the taxing demand out there right now. So we have homes that will flow right along from stage to stage to stage, but sometimes you hit that roadblock because there are only so many concrete forms in the marketplace right now, and they got to get filled up with concrete before they can move to the next job site.
Yeah, as a realtor who works with buyers and is constantly evaluating what's going on with all builders, is the length of time it takes to get a new home is lengthened during this time period. If pre-pandemic we had builders who could deliver a home easily in under 6 months, soup to nuts.
And now?
Even, we have to go builder by builder to figure it out. For example, Craig Builders is less about how long it takes them to build their home and more about when they have delivery dates available. They have a little bit different approach than some builders. But if you're talking about the time you break ground, the time you finish the home, I think you've seen it go from 4 to 5 months to 6 to 7 months. And if I was just to throw numbers at it, it's taking longer.
If I jump back in there for a minute, we're doing the same kind of math. We've probably added 2 months to our build schedule for something that's not an overly ornate home. I celebrate our production team. We have a critical path method schedule for every home, and each month things are changing. You've got new supply chain disruptions. It's not just about the trade partners or the subcontractors. It's also about the materials that go into that. So we adjust all our selection deadlines in our schedule for each project on a monthly basis, and we just make sure we're making those decisions when we need to. And in fact, sometimes it's not just about making the decision 2 months, 3 months earlier. Sometimes you got to thread the needle because light fixtures may become out of stock, and you don't want to pick it too soon because then you just got to pick it again. So that's part of the adventure we're living right now.
Yeah. What about building permit? What's the range you quote for what it might take to get a building permit right now?
I want to talk about that a little
Please.
more broadly.
And you got a couple planning commissioners watching the show
All
right now.
here
Just
we
give
go.
you a heads up.
Well, I can't.
Welcome to Crossfire.
Giving you a heads up here. You know which one.
This is where the national data I have will come in handy. So workarounds are some of the statistics from a presentation that my production manager, Benjamin Graham, participated in last week while I was out. And I'm glad that he shared the presentation with me so I could prep last night. But he said some of the biggest attention to workarounds in our industry right now, and some of these things aren't surprising. 86% of people are focused on supply disruptions. Not a surprise, okay? Labor shortages, 49%. So for that question about trades being busy, actually not as bad as the supply. We talked about lumber as well. Land disruption, something else we've talked about, 37%. So lower than both of those. Another statistics in this report says that a lot of the bigger production builders they feel their biggest land pinch right now, but they think the next 6 months, the next year and a half, and 2 years that land is out in front of them. They're just struggling right now. But yeah, the surprise for me, 53% bigger than the land disruption, bigger than labor shortage, are government services slowing down the bills.
You're talking regulatory costs.
Timeline and costs.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, to the commissioners and representatives watching today, I have to tell my clients after we sign a contract and once we get our building permit applied for, that their building permit is going to take somewhere between 3 and 12 weeks to get back. We have permits taking over 2 months to get back. The review process, I believe, could be a little better than that. I think there's some growing pains as things have surged. I think there's some technology pains as things have surged. I think a lot of those costs, as the municipalities are navigating that, are all just getting passed down to my clients, and the builders are always the culprits. I volunteer a lot. Both for housing affordability, affordable housing, as well as the Blue Ridge Home Builders Association. We have great relationships with both the city and Albemarle County, and they know that as an association we want to talk, we want an open forum. Any way that we can improve things, we're here. We've got our idea cap. We've actually had a couple of roundtables, and we're having conversations with the municipalities to try to improve those things.
Bill McKenzie, welcome to the broadcast. This is a question that came up last week, 2 weeks ago on the show. We were discussing how roughly 24% of a cost of a new home is tied to red tape and regulatory costs, and that's Commonwealth-wide statistic. That's something I learned. When I heard that, it was kind of demoralizing, a statistic like that. If a $400,000 home, 100K of that is tied to red, that's nuts. So the topic that's being brought up, and Keith just posted something like this on the feed from St. Martin. Keith, our chemistry
Go back
is working.
to the beach.
Our chemistry is working across country right now, and you're in a different country. So why don't we go down that road, because it's coming up on Twitter here from Davis. Jerry, bring up the stat with your guests about how red tape is making everything in here so expensive. It's a good comment, right?
Absolutely. Was that a question, like, build on that?
Yeah. Anywhere you want to go. That's from Twitter.
Okay, right on. And when we think about it more granularly in terms of the cost of a building permit, or it's not just a building permit. We need a septic permit. We need a well permit. This is in my world of more custom stuff. But you've got entitlements for developers that are bringing land to the market, and you might have to pay a proffer. You're certainly paying for all the infrastructure that you're putting in place, and then you're paying a tax on top of all that. So these numbers are real. It is a tax on new construction. Older homes, well, I would say this: we've been complaining about the tax on new construction for 20 years. But that house that was built 20 years ago, it had a regulatory burden placed on it that's less than half of what the burden is on a new construction home today.
Is that true? That's true?
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
It's always a fight that we'll continue to fight, and I'm sympathetic to the cost of doing business, but
why is it 2x?
I feel like as things go up, I don't know. I feel like as a small business owner, we're held accountable to our purse, our doing our job well, and being market rate. and not to throw the municipalities under the bus, but it's just an aggregate of what they're able to get done, and whatever that costs, it just gets passed on to the next user. So I think that our municipalities, and I know that they're working on it. I know that Charlottesville has a new city manager who I have a lot of confidence in, and I've volunteered with him in the past, and I know he gets it. But it's really about, I think, finding the opportunities for improvement in their processes and streamlining.
Look, there's a cause to creating new homes, right, and new communities that have a cost to the overall community, right, in the area. And I guess you have to decide who's going to pay for it, that impact fee of those new homes. And I think right now a lot of it falls on the builders and the developers. But there's a fine line between growth and smart growth, right? And I think this conversation about what's happened in other parts of the state, like Northern Virginia. Loudoun County is the one that it's come up for years every time. I've got a lot of transplants from Northern Virginia here that want to prevent what happened there from happening here. And that's making sure the infrastructure and all the supporting services we need as we create more housing. I mean, it's a big conversation in Crozet right now, right? Every month they're revisiting this plan and what it should be, and whether or not they're listening to the residents or listening to the planning commissioners or the supervisors are going their own way, whatever it is. It's a complicated conversation.
Keith says, and multiple questions are coming in, regulations imposed by all levels of government account for $93,870 or 23.8% of the current average sales price of a new single-family home, according to a new study by NAHB. Of the $93,870 figure, $41,330 is attributable to regulation during development, and $52K plus is due to regulation during construction. Good night.
Yeah, so ultimately it's a tax on new homes that the home buyer's paying.
Right. That's something that we need to put more guys out there for us to understand. Slater's got a question for you, Slater. This is about interest rates. If interest rates increase, will that help stabilize this market? And that's from Melissa.
Absolutely. I think, there's this guy from Altos Research who he started listing the 10 reasons we got ourselves into this inventory crisis. And one of them is, he pointed out, interest rates, the average interest rate for a mortgage has been sub 4% for over a decade now. And so to create
I think we made our own bet.
We did. Interest rates, look, if interest rates go up too much, we'll hit the wall and turn 3. But, I think interest rates need to be at a little bit higher than, right now they're at 3.125, for the last year they've been around 3%. And what that caused is people own, we call them co-primary homes now. During the pandemic, people were buying a second home all over the country that they could, in Zoom towns, right? I'm going to live in this home because I don't want to sell it, and I can afford to buy another home because interest rates are so low, and I can live out of both of them half time and Airbnb them when I'm not living in them. And a lot of that's going on, and a lot of that has kept a lot of inventory from ever getting to the market. So, yes, I think a gradual uptick in interest rates will dampen some of the demand and maybe bring some, not just make the demand less, but move the demand down a price point, right? Because we're looking at these monthly affordability factors when we do it. So I think we've proven that 3% interest rates creates too much demand in the marketplace.
Braden NC on Twitter has a comment for you. Braden, let us know where you're watching here. Braden says, Christopher, if interest rates go up, what are your thoughts on how that could impact new construction and people trying to get into the home of their dreams?
Yeah, that's something, Braden, I appreciate that question that we're facing a lot right now, and I think about regularly. I was thinking about it a lot last night. What we're noticing is that there, as part of this great reshuffling, we say, you've got folks moving down from Northeast, New York, Chicago, Northern Virginia. They have more buying power. Some of them aren't buying with a mortgage. Those folks aren't going to be impacted by that. They're just not. I think you've got millennials coming to the market. They're ready to buy. Some are saying the inventory's not there. Some are saying I'm ready in a year or two. Some are saying I'm ready in 3 to 5. They're there. They're affecting the market. I think they're going to be affected more by the interest rates. I'm reading maybe 3.5% by the end of the year. 3.75, maybe as an average for next
Still
year.
cheap money.
It's still cheap money. And it's going to affect
Historically,
things,
unbelievably cheap.
Yeah.
but I think, I don't know. I see it to be on a more local level. People seeking Charlottesville and Albemarle County. I see that demand being high. That's my crystal ball call for at least the next 12 months. That shuffle. I think the people that are more susceptible to those interest rates are going to have to make decisions about maybe a different product, maybe a smaller house, maybe less bells and whistles, maybe something that's connected. I think that we've been in an interest rate environment that has allowed first and second time home buyers to have something bigger, and we got to see whether they're inclined to make that next buy if they have to make a compromise. But I think that's what we're going to see in the next year.
Yeah, it's very common to have people show up with a budget that they can comfortably afford and go shopping, and then throw that out the window quickly and increase their budget, redo the math until they find the price point that affords them the opportunity to get the home they want. Because they can afford more.
Are most of these folks working from ISPs at bigger areas and coming down here?
That's absolutely happening. We hear about it every day. But I lost my train of thought on that.
Well, our neighbor's a perfect example, and you brought this up. Our neighbors across the street from us just bought a house. They sold their townhome. I think they said it was 1,180 square feet in Northern Virginia for a little over $1.2 million. Came down to our neighborhood, bought a house for just over $800K. That was, on nearly 3/4 of an acre. That's 5,000 square feet. She's working for Deloitte from Charlottesville, Deloitte, Northern Virginia, and he's working for a law firm in D.C., both using an ISP, keeping their paycheck up there, and this is great.
That's a very common story. I could tell you story after story after story about that scenario.
Liz Anderson, giving you some props right now on the show. This question: when does the market start to get balance again?
Well, that's what we're looking for. We don't know. I started the show by talking about last month, for the first time since the pandemic started, we listed what we consider a normal amount of homes, resale home opportunities. Between last March and this March, for 12 months, we were not keeping pace and not even close, So hopefully, it looks like May will be another month. Well, we'll list more homes than we listed last May, but we'll list about the same number of homes or more than we listed in the May before. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So basically there's a big trough of listings there, and we're just back to a rate that feels like normal. How long is that sustainable? We don't know. A prime example I can give you is I thought we were, in some segments of the market, I think we've seen a little bit. You can't expect 30 showings in a weekend and 10 offers. But it's still happening, and it happened over the weekend in Grey Rock. And that home was listed for $499,900, and they got 23 showings in 2 days and 9 offers. And
is it under contract?
It's under contract. Most of the offers were 10% more than the list price. Matter of fact, when it closes, if it closes for what I'm told they got, it will be the highest price point ever achieved in Grey Rock.
Good. Michael Buchensky, First Heritage Mortgage, has got a comment for you guys.
He lives in Grey Rock.
Right? Crozet guy. Millennials saw the 2008 collapses, and as a result of that, they are super fiscally responsible. I find most of them have large amounts of money saved up for down payments, etc. So I think buying power could shift if rates go up from needed low rates to qualifying to have funds to make up the difference.
That's where I lost my train of thought. I was thinking about these millennials. The point, he's right about that. Of course, millennials kind of have the scar tissue from what they saw their parents go through 10 years ago. There's no doubt about that. In some cases, I'm seeing these couples, whether they're starting a family or planning on starting a family, come showing up looking for that first-time home, townhome, $300,000 to $400,000, and quickly pivoting to spending $500,000 to $600,000 because of interest rates, and knowing they're really trying to make that 10-year move. There's not a home between schools, right? They're making that purchase, expecting to have kids and then being in the right school district before they even have kids.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. One of the things, and I'll pivot a little shamelessly, that I'm enjoying about this market right now, and I hope others are seeing it out there too. I think you've got a lot of people that have been sitting on the fence for a long time. Maybe they weren't thinking about selling. Maybe they wanted to sell, but they didn't think they could get what they needed from their house. There is a very cool inventory of listings right now that are people just a home that you maybe never thought you'd see on the market, and it might be a little overpriced right now,
but it might not be.
It might not be. Greg and I are looking at one right now. You got to keep it under the wraps. But
don't say it on air then.
but that's what I love about the market. We were at the beach for spring break, and there were so many houses for sale at the beach. Some markets there's just not enough inventory, but I think you've got people listing homes that you just wouldn't have seen listed 2 years ago. Creating opportunities in the market to go buy a very unique opportunity, and I'm having fun watching that.
Real estate decisions are incredibly emotional and psychological. There's just so much that goes into your decision making. I'll never forget during the darkest hours. It was an economic summit in D.C. by the realtors. I think it was in 2009, right at the cusp of the short sales starting. The banks couldn't handle the short sales. It was a disaster. And I saw Alan Greenspan speak, and he goes, We're going through something very terrible here, but this too will end. We just don't know when yet. He says, because you can only hold the American consumer down for so long. And I think some of what's happening now is people wrote out that pandemic thinking, I'm sure a lot of people thought, because I had these conversations, that the pandemic was going to slow things down so much prices were going to fall. And so if you were sitting back waiting for buying opportunities and it turned into the opposite, sooner or later you're just going to have to, if you need to buy a home, you're going to have to go deal with the market conditions and get in on it.
Right. More questions coming in. Bill McChensey's got a question. He says, for Greg, how do you feel about the draft land use proposal?
The draft land use proposal.
Bill, why don't you offer a little more perspective on this? I think he's talking specifically, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, sir. That's why I'm asking for more specifics on your question. But I believe what he's alluding to is there's conversation about potentially eliminating the R1 single-family zoning in the city of Charlottesville to add more density to 10.2 square miles because we're landlocked. We have nowhere else to build, as everyone at this table knows. Do you want to hit that topic at all? Or?
I don't really. Yeah. I don't spend a lot of time dwelling. I'm so immersed in what's happening at the bleeding edge of the market. I know there are a lot of people who follow those things, and that's why we have guys like Neil Williamson working for us to keep us informed and to know when to rally us around particular topics and issues. But yeah, that's not something I have a lot of comment on.
Okay, this question's coming in from Julia. Christopher, the type of buyers you like to work with and why? The type of home builders you like to work with and why?
Julia,
Loffe. Is that Loft, Julia? I think that's Julia.
Julia, thanks for the question. That's a great question because we spend a lot of time thinking about who our clients are and who our clients are not. And our clients are people that want something different than what they can find from a catalog. They want to collaborate on something really unique that's built around the shape of their lot, the views of their lot. Maybe they want to take advantage of really unique energy efficiency options or a home that produces all of its own electricity. It's a client that really wants that high-touch, uber custom experience that is an ideal client for Bramante. And I don't mean to make it sound like it's that cumbersome. Yes, it's a lot of work, but you're in good hands, and we like to make it a lot of fun, make it easy.
I like it.
And if you want, I'll go back.
Please.
The question about the zoning, and I don't know if he clarified whether that's what was his point. I live in a planned community that allowed a second dwelling unit on my property. It's a small, I live on less than 2/10 of an acre, but I have an ADU over my garage. I have a tenant there. We're meeting an affordable housing segment. She's fantastic. And I love, I tell the story of playing Monopoly. I get to make a career of playing Monopoly. Jerry, I know we've talked about it. You do the same thing. But I think that's low-hanging fruit. There are other cities across our country that do that. I know Keith is a steward for that.
You like the ADUs.
It's a free market concept, and it's an easy button to add a lot of density to the city of Charlottesville when the city of Charlottesville, I think, is in an affordable housing crisis. I don't know that you can rewrite the rules fast enough in other ways to do that or fight, like you said, red tape. It's a green tape easy button. It's a very controversial subject, but I think we could learn a lot from markets like Oregon and
Seattle.
Minneapolis, Seattle,
Portland.
Yeah.
I'm an advocate for these ADUs and things, the way they impact the market. I know a lot. It changes the economics of home ownership when you can generate a little more income on your property. It just needs to be in the right place and done the right way. One of the challenges created by these ADUs are people trying to Airbnb or nightly rental or homestay, whatever the best way to describe them are, in places where they weren't intended, and they become a nuisance for your neighbors. And so, these zoning laws and HOA covenants always have unintended consequences, and we just got to have to adapt and make good decisions.
Brooks just sent me a text message. He's watching the show. What would be the drawback of an ADU for this area? It seems like housing for everybody is a good thing. I guess one of the drawbacks some people fear is additional traffic, maybe potentially a greater tax on resources like roads, EMTs, police, fire rescue, schools.
All the above,
Yeah.
sure.
Good text, Brooks.
Those are the real life things that happen when you put more people on a smaller piece of property, right?
Yeah. Well, anything you want to throw in on?
Yeah, those are the right questions to ask, and I think we go find those answers in the other markets that are doing it. Until you try it, you can assume that for every new ADU you're going to have another car and another person in school and all these things, but not every property is going to tax the infrastructure like that. And there's data out there, and we can learn from it. Data's our friend, so let's go figure it out. You don't need to do the whole town, but like if you could live 2 blocks from the downtown mall,
it'd be awesome.
Doesn't that reduce your need for a car?
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't that increase the use of public transportation?
That's right.
Yeah.
Very well said. Buchenski's got something for both you guys. Maybe slightly off topic, but ask Chris what he thinks about the whole house, quote, battery, quote, with solar option. Is it actually affordable, or should folks wait? We saw with this gas scare how crazy people can get, so God forbid something happens to the electrical grid, something like that in a new home builds super value.
Well, great pivot, and I want Christopher to speak to that, but I also want to let people know one of your sponsors is Pearl Certification.
Yes.
We're huge advocates. I'm a huge advocate for protecting the value of these investments when you make them, when you resell your home. And of course, Christopher is one of a very limited number of builders who sees the value of Pearl Certification. And so when you complete the process with him, we can talk about how he customizes his approach to energy efficiency, just like he customizes his kitchens. But he pays to put that Pearl Certification on there to verify the work he did to protect the long-term value of that investment.
And I learned about this. The Pearl Certification is roughly $400 a home, and it drives that $400, 8-10% in value, is that?
Well, I think the first case study they did, they came up with about 4 to 5% in this market. They're working on another one. But at the end of the day, it's an insurance policy. We need to test the homes to make sure they're actually being built the way we think we're building them. But then you need to make a record of the way that home was built. It's a Carfax for the home. So, sometimes I sell homes that were built energy efficient. Someone bought a very energy efficient home, and the owner, and I go to help them sell it. The owner doesn't even understand what they have, and a lot of realtors are still trying to get more educated on this topic, but you can't add value to something you don't highlight or know exists in the sales process.
Your thoughts on
Mike, storage, right? That's what we call it. And the cost of storage is going down. So the availability of batteries in your home is changing rapidly. I build a house for myself every few years, and I ask the experts. We rely on experts when we customize energy packages. Is now the time to build a house off the grid? 3 years ago, it was not the time. I would speculate that today that is a tipping point. Certainly, in another 5 years, if you don't want to connect your house to the grid, I think that's your prerogative. There's a local startup here called Lumen. Alex built a house for the guys. Super big brain, really smart guy, and what his company does is manages the consumption of at any given time of your home. So it's going to plan your peak loads and drag them out throughout the day so that you can use a smaller storage capacity for your home. This is the kind of technology that makes that all happen sooner than later. Are we there today? No, it's on the horizon. We'll be there.
Starting to see people add power walls, Tesla power walls to their new homes. So look, solar and power walls and things like that are most suited actually for new construction because usually there aren't a lot of trees. Shade prevents solar. But the homes are just advanced energy efficiently. The structure's tighter, it's better insulated, and so, look, you don't want to add solar and store power in a home that's wasting energy. the right answer may be to look at your home and have an energy audit and reduce the amount it consumes before you invest in creating energy. That's really what should come first. And a lot of people don't understand that component.
Gary Tomlin's wondering, has a question for you. How are increased fuel prices going to impact your business model? Mr. Bremen. Go ahead, Mr. Bremen.
I'm embarrassed to say that it's not a huge visible impact. I think it matters, and it certainly matters to the excavation trades, but it's, and I could be wrong. I could be in for an awakening, but I'm not seeing it right now.
Well, you don't have a lot of trucks on the road, but I guess they're
not personally, but I mean,
ultimately all the products being delivered, you're gonna feel it in the price increases.
I think that's a great point, and I think it will come through. I think the bigger challenges are availability of trucking trucks and the drivers for the trucks. And when you miss a route, it's not like you can just run two tomorrow. I think those are bigger challenges than the cost of the fuel right now.
This question, is the new construction footprint expanding further than you ever thought?
Like the radius in which we build?
I think he's alluding to a lot of folks doing it, other side of the mountain. I believe, is Ryan now penetrating the other? No, Stanley Martin is now penetrating the other side of the mountain, right?
That's one of the things I had prepared to talk about a little bit today, because I watch these new home sales every month, and we're keeping up year over year, month over month we can't really increase, the sales aren't increasing, they're staying at a high level but are relatively constant, but the geography is changing completely. The last time, what did I pull here? So last month there were 28 more sales than there were that same month the year before, and 22 of those 28 increased sales were in Fluvanna Green or Louisa. So,
do you think the demand gets stifled though if gas prices keep getting closer to 4?
I don't know that will slow it down.
Because
I think that's a secondary consideration. I think it might drive people more towards electric cars. At the same time, Mike's question about storage is, some people store electric by having an electric car in their garage, right? Because you make more power than you consume, and then you make your car run on solar. It's another way of skinning that cat.
What do you think?
Yeah, so Bramante Homes got started in Augusta County. We were always a bedroom community for Charlottesville. We still build over there. The product that we're building right now, we build fewer of them each year over there, but I have a lot of peers in that market that are in fuego right now. They can't keep up. They're hiring up. They're building more homes. I think that, as the affordability does not exist in Charlottesville and Albemarle County, people are going to drive further to be able to afford it.
It's always a background consideration, but I've never seen that cost of gasoline rise up to a level that it influences a real estate decision.
Really?
Not really. No.
Wow. Okay.
There are ways to get around it.
Yeah, right. And I was reading about electric vehicles. By 2030, they expect EVs to have a 9% share of the market, which I thought would be much higher than that, than 9%.
It's a big ship to turn. People are still worried about where they're going to recharge and running out and colder weather and the reliability. We've come a long way. I think in the next 2 or 3 years, you're just going to see an influx of all the major brands introducing electric cars, and it'll be fun to watch. I fully intend for my next car to be electric. It doesn't make any sense for me to sell my perfectly fine car now to switch to electrics, but I know I'm not going to buy another gas-powered car. For myself. I'm
in the same boat. Where's the next big new construction neighborhood coming in this area?
The next big, these guys float out the properties that are under contract or in the early stages of planning. I'm at the tip of the sword. Sometimes I don't waste my time listening to fantasy timelines for when the next big thing is coming, because I've seen communities missed by 5 years. There's a big parcel between Dunlore, behind Dunlore and Belvedere, that's been taken down that will become a community right there in what I would consider the urban ring, a very central location to the county. North Point has a long way to go. They're just getting started. That's probably first and foremost on my mind for where new homes are coming. There are little other pocket opportunities where you'll see some things. Spring Creek is going through nothing short of a renaissance, a reawakening. We've seen values there in the last year probably jump more like 15%. In the last week, I've seen sales. If in the history of Spring Creek, I don't think anybody spent over $700,000. I saw a sale last week there for $800,000.
Really?
And these are retirees who are buying their last home and have very good resources. And if you want to live in your community 80% of the time and play golf, I mean, there's a lot of good things going to Spring Creek. And look, $500,000 or $600,000 may seem like a lot to us for Spring Creek, but if you're not tied to driving to Charlottesville every day and you're coming from Northern Virginia, it looks like you're thievery.
It's a steal. Yeah, it's a steal. Our buddies at Stony Point are watching in. They're doing a hell of a job really developing the restaurants and the commerce outside of Spring Creek. I enjoyed a fantastic meal with my wife and son at El Mariachi, which is right across from the Spring Creek entrance. Johnny Ornalis, who owns the Guadalajara JPA, Fry Springs, he started El Mariachi out there, and everywhere I'm looking at, Rhett's just started at Zion's Crossroads.
10 years ago, it's a truck stop.
Right.
It all started with the Walmart distribution center.
Right. When Walmart comes, that area is going to blow the hell up.
And it didn't hurt. Look, I was working Spring Creek since it launched.
You were?
Well, it's taking people out there, sure. But we called it Glenmore Light, and I knew people that sold their homes in Glenmore. Like, there's arguably a better golf course over here
it's a great golf course.
For a fraction of the cost of the home and a fraction of the cost of playing golf. But when they built an apartment complex across from Spring Creek at Zion's Crossroads, I'm like, oh yeah, the apartment people usually get it right.
They do. Should we throw any remodeling out there? Your take on where that's going to go? Because I'm sure you got some takes on this.
Yeah, no, I think it's a as a builder, it's a great market to be considering. It's not an environment that we're in right now, but I think the builders that are taking advantage of that are wise. I think you're going to see a lot of people, maybe as interest rates change, think about working on their home more so instead of moving away from it. I invite all the consumers on the show today to think about that. And we talk about it often. We're not there yet. Maybe soon.
2 least favorite questions in my line of work: can you recommend a mover? And do you know anybody available to remodel? That's just so hard to answer those 2 questions.
Why is that? Why? Because there's so many good ones?
Well, I don't help people choose movers a lot, but they're also busy. It costs so much more than anybody expects. And, a mover 6 months ago that everybody was raving about may be not so great anymore. So I just don't keep up with the reputations. But, trying to find someone available to come give you an estimate, whether it's remodeling or other types of work, can be very difficult right now. You have to be patient and know that they're not waiting around the corner for your call.
Rather shamelessly, I'll jump back in there too, because there are some great remodelers that are a member of our Blue Ridge Home Builders Association. And when I get asked that question, I got to think of remodelers who are members of our Blue Ridge Home Builders Association. I think there's a lot of them in this community. I drop a lot of names when I get that question. It's really hard. Customer service is hard when you're working on a home that someone lives in, right? So you got to be the cream of the crop. You got to do a great job of that. But for all the remodelers out there that are not a member of the Blue Ridge Home Builders Association, come give us a shot. The benefits of your membership you reap whether you're a member or not. We're working on your behalf. Come join, be a member.
Maybe there's some Blue Ridge Home Builder remodels you want to recommend now.
Well, I'll give a shout out to Teal Construction, our friend John Kerber at Dominion Custom Homes. I know he recently launched a remodeling business. I'm gonna freeze right there and worry who I'm missing, but we just don't have a lot of remodeler members of our association. So come join us, please.
How about this question? I'm sure you get this all the time. And it's probably a question you don't like. Maybe you do like. Where is the market going and what is it going to do? How often do you get that one?
Every day I get that question. So we just have to watch the bleeding edge of the market. There's going to be a market there. We don't know who's listing their home next week. You have to kind of drill back down to your own personal situation and then figure out what you're trying to accomplish and then what order, what are the steps to accomplish it. And it's different based on circumstances. And so the macro conversation is a little hard to determine. I personally think, yes, appreciation will start cooling off at some point. We'll get some seasonality back to the market. These markets are cyclical. It's what we've seen happen to real estate with whether you want to call rising prices inflation or not, or rising real estate values inflation, is trickling into other segments of the...
rising real estate values inflation?
You can. Prices are going up. But
would you call that inflation?
No, it's more of an asset than a commodity.
How I see it.
So, but as we look at the economy, when we hold back all this demand and we interrupt supply in a variety of segments of the market, whether places were shutting down, people not going to work, we hear about all the labor shortages. These are the things that cause an uptick in when demand exceeds supply, things start to cost more. And I think we're just getting started, and we don't know the impacts and how long it's going to last. But you got to stay away from the macro conversation a little bit, because it's just like timing the stock market. These things are very difficult to do. This is our housing. These are our homes. You need to get some good advice from a mortgage lender like Mike Buccinski, or a realtor like Keith Smith, or a home builder like Christopher Bremmett, for whatever your goals are, and figure out where you want to end up, then back into a plan to achieve it. And if it's not happening right now, maybe it's getting in a conversation where you're monitoring what's going on. But for most people, it's deciding if they want to sell their home first or find their next home first. If you decide you want your next home first, we go fishing, right? Just like we talked about starting at this show. We wait for the right fish to swim along, and then we catch it.
I like
Otherwise,
that.
and then you back into selling your home. But some people have to do that in reverse.
Nathan Trice giving you props.
Hey, Nathan.
John Graziano giving you props. Mustache Dan Pettit giving you some props right now on the show. We love when you watch the show, Mustache Dan Pettit. This is an interesting one. This is one of the CAC. Is it the Crozet Community Advisory Committee?
Yeah.
Jerry, get Greg's take on infrastructure around Crozet and where we're headed.
Do you
live in that area?
Yeah, we
I
both
live in
live in
Crozet
Old
also.
Trail.
Okay, so both you guys.
It's an ongoing conversation, and I stay loosely related to it. But right now I think there's a conversation about that CCAC was created to be a community input to the Planning Commission, and most of what I'm reading and hearing now is that it's kind of disconnected. The community has a voice that's not being listened to. As someone who lives in Crozet and has lived there for 10 years and plans on living there for a very long time, as a business owner at the creamery, one side of the perspective as Crozet grows, sure, is that good for the small businesses there? Absolutely. They're finally dealing with this elementary school issue. The construction of the Crozet expansion is ongoing. I don't know if they're keeping up or going to get ahead, but they're doing whatever they can do to deal with that. That has been a problem. I'm not one of these people who gets all hung up in the traffic conversation. I still think, as someone who drives around Charlottesville and Albemarle County,
We're lucky.
Crozet's not that big of a traffic problem. I know it bothers people that we're creating too many houses and putting too many cars on the road. But look, there's not you've got Pleasant Green that's got another couple of phases. You've got Glenbrook that's got another couple of phases. Old Trail has got more homes coming, but not as many as you think. But eventually, that land problem will present itself in Crozet as well, unless there are parcels out there that somebody's just waiting to introduce to the Planning Commission.
You want to hit that one?
I think we're going to figure it out. I don't think it's as big a problem. At the risk of ostracizing myself and the conversations that may flood in after
This is a hot button topic.
I mean, I think if you want a critical voice, you're going to find it. And the voice of the majority is usually a little quieter. I love Crozet. It's a designated growth area. That's why I moved there. It's huge compared to when I moved there in 2003. And I look forward to the growth that's been planned out there. And I think it would be inappropriate to chop those legs off in a market where we need more housing.
You feel good about that?
Yeah, that's a fair answer. I mean, look, everybody gets to have their own opinion on this, and everybody gets to choose where they live. I chose Crozet 10 years ago. Nothing's changed my mind about wanting to live there, and I know as much about what's going to happen next as anybody.
Keith says, "You rock," Christopher Bremmett. He said he did exact words from Keith. As I posted earlier, when I did my final walkthrough on a Bramante home, I couldn't find a single blemish in the construction. Wow, that's kind words right there.
Thanks, Keith.
That's kind words right there. Gentlemen, we're at 11:30. We've gone in an hour and 15 minutes. Time flies when we're having fun. Any final words? I know we have some stuff we may or may not have gone to. Did we cover it?
We're good. We covered everything. Right?
Yeah.
That was a great conversation. I enjoyed being a part of it.
Same. Anything you want to throw out there?
Man, I was looking at my notes a minute ago. We've been around the horn. Greg and I can often be found on a Thursday evening talking real estate somewhere in Crozet. If you
Where do you
want
guys
to keep
go?
the conversation
Far-downers?
going,
Someone's basement.
Someone's basement?
Yeah.
Okay,
or
fantastic.
backyard, yeah.
Fantastic. Guys, Christopher Bremmett and Greg Slater today on Real Talk. I think Friday we have Quentin Beckham and Lee Elberson, as Keith Smith and his better 7/8 Jonas Smith are out of the country recharging the battery. This show, we take your questions and we try to answer them. That's the whole concept of this show. It's a round table where we take your questions and give you some perspective. Thank you for joining us on Real Talk on a Tuesday. The I Love Seville show is up in 59 minutes. You guys have a good morning. Take care. Wait 1 second.